This is going to be a rough one. So Steins Gate, a classic in the anime scene, both for its sci-fi, its characters, and just overall handling of time travel. It's one, much like everything that I've covered on this channel, that has been on my list forever. But after my long consumption of romance anime for the past couple months, I finally decided I need to start deviating and, take a break from that genre and consume something that gets me thinking in a different type of way. So I decided to go to Steins Gate. And of course, going into Steins Gate, I knew very, very little about it. Almost nothing, pretty much. The most I knew really was the name Okabe, and that this deals with time travel somewhat, and that it's a classic and amongst like the top 10 on Mao. But I'm gonna be honest about this right away. This is probably gonna be the most difficult show to dissect and talk about, for me at least, on this channel, just because when it comes to time travel and that different kind of sci-fi handling of the genre, I'm not well versed. I mean, time travel, it's a slippery thing to talk about. It can either be handled very sloppily or very well done. Like, not just in anime, but just in sci-fi genres in general. And while the time travel aspect of Steins Gate obviously is like the center point and main driving force for the plot of the show, it honestly just served as a device for the amazing characters of this show. And I just realized I'm not wearing the correct hat. I'm not wearing any hat at all. There we go. The characters of Okabe, Makise, and Mayuri being the three most integral characters for me when it comes to just taking something away from this. And I guess this is the first spoiler thing I'm going to delve into on this, and that is, I did not expect this series to be so romance heavy. I mean, it's not that it was romance heavy, it's more in the second half of the series that it becomes, I guess, heavy. And I guess that benefits more, for me at least, towards me consuming so much romance anime in these recent times. It allowed me to appreciate it more, because I definitely would say, if I watched this series years ago, during me first consuming a lot of anime, I'm not sure I would have maybe enjoyed the whole romance aspect of it. When it got to the romance stuff, I was just like, God damn it, I was watching this to escape the romance. Pretty much this whole review is going to be divided up into me talking about two specific characters. First part is I'm going to really be delving into Okabe, and then the second part I'm going to be delving more into Makise. Because pretty much the basic plot, I guess, of Steins Gate, to try to my best to explain it, it's pretty much this group of ragtag, older teenager, late 20s-ish characters that form this lab, which is just this guy's apartment, where they're trying to make this guy who exclaims himself as Hyoin Kyoma, the mad scientist, who eventually actually creates something that works. And they don't really understand at first, but going forward into the series, they realize that they inadvertently created a time machine by using a phone, an old computer, a microwave, and an old CRT TV. The thing is, for a show like this, I would have expected it to be much longer, and while it sort of is, because there is other stuff afterwards, the main chunk of the story they really need to consume is the main series. I forget what it's called, but it's the Egotist, the one where they go to the America afterwards. The one OVA that takes place after the series, and then the movie. I know there's Steins Gate Zero, and I delved a little bit into that just to really see what it was, but really all Steins Gate Zero is just explaining a slap and a video that's played in one episode towards the end. It's you don't really need to watch it. But really the big tipping point for the entire series is once you get to, I think it's episode 12 or 13, when Okabe is forced to use the time machine, not just for experimentation or fun, but to actually save someone's life. And that's when the show transforms from sort of a sci-fi comedy to a sci-fi drama murder mystery. And that's why, honestly, this show is definitely more of a season 1-2 than, say, a complete 24 episode series, because it is around that 12 episode mark when the series completely flips and becomes something different. And this is where I'm going to start delving into Okabe as a character, because I'm coming onto this a couple days now after completing Steins Gate. I just gave myself a little bit more time, because I'll definitely say this isn't one that immediately hit me. I didn't cry or anything watching this, but it definitely messed with my brain a bit, just trying to, and I will say, like, of course I've talked about my reviews, like there's the list of my investment. Steins Gate did not immediately hook me. Like, I was definitely lazy when it came to binging this show, just because for about like 2 weeks I was stuck on like doing like an episode like every other day, because I wasn't too invested in binging it all right away. But once I eventually decided to really just sit down and be like, all right, let me finish this, then that's when I was finally like, okay, this is around like episode 8, 9, 10, and then obviously like episode 12 is when I finally was like, okay, I'm into it now. But of course that's just my dumbass, just because I hear the name Steins Gate for years and I have like all these expectations for going into it. But just go into it knowing that for the first couple episodes it's a lot more focused on like the comedy everyday life kind of thing. And while there is like the sci-fi intrigue in the beginning of the time travel stuff, it's all really good setup and get you invested and really liking the characters for when that switch happens and it's like, oh shit, we need to fix this. There is one thing I have to specify as well. I watched Steins Gate in the dub. Like, classic anime fans are like, ugh, dub, ugh. But listen, by now, I've talked about forever, dubs, as long as they're handled really well and the voice acting is well directed, are really good and can be really good. Like, I have a video that I plan on releasing where I break down and talk about shows that you should give a chance dubbed, and I think in some cases are better dubbed. From some of the clips I've seen of the sub, this was definitely a smart choice to watch dubbed, just because J. Michael Tatum is the voice of Okabe, and I think he does a phenomenal job. I mean, J. Michael Tatum is one of my favorite voice actors as well. You know, he's in the English dub of My Hero Academia. He voices Ida. In Fullmetal Alchemist, he voices Scar, and of course many other classic characters throughout many other anime. Now, I'm recording this later because I'm an idiot and I can't schedule things properly, and time is a bitch, as this series has taught us. Where I left off was I was about to talk about Okabe Rintaro, aka Ocarine, aka Hoin Kyoma. One of the most interesting things about Okabe in this series is just watching his progression into insanity. Okabe's arc pretty much is this. It's not so much an arc as it is a wave. I mean, as one would, going back and forth through time and constantly like having to relive the same day over and over again, to the point where you do pretty much go insane. To the point where someone's like, no, you're Hoin Kyoma, like you're great, you're amazing. He's like, no, shut up. It's just a character, like so much to the point where he literally breaks. I mean, it's set up pretty early on where it's like, oh yeah, time travel, and also just in the concept as well. It's like time travel. It's a lot of strain on your mental health that will drive you to insanity, which we see happen with Okabe. Like, starting out as just this bright, bubbly scientist discovering something that he never thought was possible, where by the end he's like scorning the idea of time travel and just like, I hate this. But he has to use it in order to save who he needs to save. And that's where the good like back and forth between him and Makise Kurisu comes in, because like she pretty early on establishes just like, yeah, I am probably the only person you can rely on when it comes to this stuff, which of course leads to a lot of different antics between them going back and forth, where like early on she's like, whenever you jump, like say this key phrase to my past self and it should work, or just like know that I'm the only one that you can really rely on. Where it's an interesting development, and honestly a lot has changed between now from me finishing Steins Gate at the start of this video to now a couple days later where I'm finishing recording this video, where I've had a lot more time to really think about it. Because right when I finished Steins Gate, I was like, you know what? For being such a popular series, you know, a name I've heard for years now, like, oh, Steins Gate, it's such an amazing sci-fi show. Like, finishing it initially, I was like, yeah, it was pretty good, but I felt like I was still missing that like oomph to be like, holy shit, that was really good. Like, there wasn't necessarily a moment throughout this show where I was hype. It was more just like I was intrigued, and I guess that's obviously the difference between like, you know, an action show and whatnot and like a drama, which again, I would more classify this instead of like sci-fi action as more sci-fi drama. Sci-fi drama with unexpected romance. Now, Makise Kurisu, I'm gonna be honest, like through like the main like chunk of the series, you know, the 24 episodes, by the end she's definitely my favorite character, but it's hard to describe her because obviously like emotion wise she's very tsundere. She's also very, you know, she's snarky. That's honestly where I'll come into like praising the dub, because the dub of this is phenomenal. Like, again, J. Michael Tatum does an amazing job as Okabe, and I'm forgetting the voice actress who voices Makise, but she does an incredible, outstanding job as well. I would definitely recommend watching it dubbed, of course. Like, obviously, I get the people who are like, I want to watch it subbed because, you know, it's the original source material and like intended vision or whatever. I mean, it's like the only difference is just like, yeah, the dub may not get exact translations right, but more or less, again, my whole argument that I've talked about forever is just like, if you want to watch it subbed, I will never go against people who watch it subbed, but like, there's very few series where I'm just like, no, you need to watch it dubbed. For a show like this, it's like, yeah, you can watch it either or. I'm giving praise where praise is absolutely due, and the voice actors in this, like, not just for Okabe and Makise, like for every character in this, absolutely amazing job. For Makise's character though, a lot of where her development honestly comes from is after the OVA that comes after and then the movie. Like, yeah, she has good developments in the last couple episodes of the series. A lot of the moments where I really felt like rooting for her and just was like, yeah, you go girl, I guess, was during those like last couple things. It's just mainly between the interactions between Okabe and Makise where you find a lot of the comedy. Just, you know, of course, the classic thing where he doesn't call her Makise Kurisu really in the beginning. He calls her Christina. That's really where the bulk of the heart and soul of this series is, obviously, is between Okabe and Kurisu. And of course, like, again, the bulk of like how the second half kicks off is obviously how he's trying to save someone else he cares about. And just his relationship, honestly, just between everyone in the lab. It's just, at the end of the day, this is a really strong character piece. It does have its dark moments, like definitely in the final episode, there's a thing that Okabe does where I'm just like, holy shit. Yeah, he's committed, and I really like that, and that was brutal. And this show definitely goes the extra mile to make sure you give a shit, which definitely, with a show like this and its subject matter, you kind of have to give a shit about the characters, because if you don't, you probably won't make it far. And that's honestly kind of delving back to what the series really is about, because it's like, if Okabe didn't rely on or care about his fellow lab members as much, he wouldn't have made it far. He would have died a long time ago. At the end of the day, Steins Gate, it is a phenomenal series. Definitely stood up to the hype that I've heard about for years. Again, thankfully, like for a lot of these shows, even though I know they're iconic, I go into them pretty much knowing nothing, and that's amazing. So overall, what would I give Steins Gate? It would be wrong not to give Steins Gate as a whole a 10 out of 10. Would I say it's an absolute perfect series? No. Unless you're really into a lot of like that sci-fi time travel stuff. A lot of it can be hard to follow, especially since I went into this series trying to break away from a lot of the romance stuff that I was watching lately. And I chose this to break off into, so I really had to go from just mind-numbing romance, happy-go-lucky stuff, to then turn your brain on. A lot of shit's happening. Like, you know, it does like that typical time travel thing where it's like it sets up a thing early on that you really don't think about, but then it comes back later and it's like, holy shit. Like, and it does that all the way to the very end. And I'm just like, holy fuck, that's crazy, bro. Steins Gate, absolutely recommend it if you're a fan of anime, or even just, not even just anime, because like a lot of the tropey kind of anime stuff is kind of absent from this. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't need that. I mean, it is there, but at the same time, it kind of makes fun of it, so it's like funny. For a show now being this year 12 years old, it's great, bro. But either way, thank you for joining me for this review of Steins Gate. Sorry it's a little split up and whatnot, you know, excuses, whatever. I'm still making the video. Join me for many other one-off reviews and everything that I plan to post on the channel soon. So until next time, I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.